One important thing when we start shooting handguns, when we talk about actually hitting our target, is going to be sight alignment here. Now what we're talking about when we say sight alignment is lining up this front sight that sits at the front of your pistol into a notch that is sitting into a sight on the rear of your pistol. There seems to be a lot of new shooters coming into the market over the last few months. So what we want to kind of talk about today is the 4 basic firearm safety rules. So the first rule we want to talk about is treating every firearm as if it were loaded. And what I'm talking about here is whenever we see a gun with the slide forward, we cannot tell right now if this gun is loaded or not. So anytime we pick up a gun, whether it's at the house, at a gun store, wherever, at the range, what we want to do is go ahead and just drop that magazine, pull this slide back, look on the inside to verify that there is not a round in the chamber. And what I like to do is just go ahead and pull that back a few times. That way I can verify again that everything is clear. And then I know that this gun is safe and ready to handle. The second basic rule that we want to talk about today is never pointing this gun at something you're not willing to destroy. And what that means is wherever I point this gun, I better be willing to pull that trigger and know where that shot's going to be placed. So a lot of times everyone's usually aware of where the muzzle's going until something exciting happens and they've kind of lost concentration on keeping that in their mind. So normally we'll be at the range, they'll shoot, they'll get excited, then they turn to tell their friend or something like that, and here goes that muzzle just flagging everybody down the line. So we want to make sure in any situation we're pointing at the target or whatever we're shooting at, we're pulling down, we're either pointing at the ground, we can turn, we can talk, we can be excited, but we're keeping our mind at the end of that muzzle. Make sure it's safe. The third basic firearm safety rule that we want to talk about is keeping your finger off the trigger till you're ready to fire. Okay, so what we want to do is whenever we pick up a gun, we want to keep that trigger finger right along the top of that trigger guard there, right along the frame, okay? As long as we index there, we're going to be safe, okay? We don't want to be shooting at the range, you know, we shoot, and then keeping our trigger finger inside the trigger guard. Doesn't matter what your skill level is as a shooter, bad things can happen if we keep that trigger finger inside the trigger guard. So we always want to have it right on the outside of the frame. And once you develop this, you'll notice you'll kind of keep this discipline across multiple different platforms. So, all right, one key thing we want to talk about today is the grip of your pistol. This is the one thing you're constantly going to be working on. It's something I constantly work on myself. When we get into it, you're going to hear a lot of different things of trying to shoot, and it's going to be sight alignment and grip and stance and a lot of different aspects in there. And to me, I think grip is one of the most important aspects of it because it's going to do most for your recoil control, accuracy. Basically anything that comes around shooting this pistol is going to be affected by your grip. So we want to make sure that's right. Right out of the box, what you want to do, we have the pistol here. You're going to take your dominant hand, which I'm right-handed. You're going to place it as high up on this pistol as you can, okay? And then we're going to wrap these 3 fingers right around. And we're going back to our safety rules. We have this trigger finger placed on the side of that frame where it's nice and safe. Now, if you notice at the back of this grip here, there's not going to be really a gap at all under this beaver tail here, right at the bottom of the frame. If you grab it and there's a big space here, that's not good. It's going to give you a lot of room for recoil and it's going to be very exaggerated for you. So get as high up as on that pistol as you can, wrap those 3 fingers around. Okay, so that's how my dominant hand looks. And if you notice, I have this thumb just kind of up and out of the way, right? So now we need to apply our weak hand onto the pistol. What we want to do is we have our 4 fingers here, and I want you to concentrate on putting them flat against those 3 fingers. And a good way to index that is using your pointer finger and touching your middle finger of your dominant hand. Now this, when we start getting a little bit deeper into, drawing from a holster, this gives us a really good index point because it doesn't matter where this gun is, I know where my middle finger is. I don't have to look at it, right? If we start trying to index for the front of this pistol, I can't tell you where the front of that is, okay? So let's just focus on putting those fingers flat against those. Once we have that, we're gonna take the heel of our weak hand and we're gonna fill this gap right here, okay? So they'll attach right here and we're gonna fill that gap, okay? There shouldn't be any space in here, so you shouldn't see the top of the grip like that and you shouldn't see the bottom of the grip like that, okay? So we're just gonna fill all that space in. And always remember, just dominant thumb on top of weak thumb and just place that thumb right on top. If you notice my thumbs here, I'm not overbearing down and pushing down. I'm just having those nice and relaxed, okay? And then I am squeezing with my dominant hand, and then I am pushing in on this side with my weak hand. So almost like, think you're trying to like crush an apple or something, okay? So we're actually hooking these pins and we're rotating inwards, okay? Thumbs are relaxed though. That's gonna keep nice, good dexterity on your trigger finger. So a good way to practice this is just dry fire at the house or just using a fake blue gun or something like that where we can establish our grip and just get used to holding the gun, okay? Just picking it up high up as you can and establishing that grip there. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is our stance. And this is kind of a progressive style, so we want to make sure we have our grip and our trigger press lined out perfectly before we get into this too much. You'll see people really concentrate on this, and you got to realize if we're in a concealed carry scenario or something like that, you're really not going to have the time to be like, wait, I need to set my stance and go, okay? But this is something that's really going to establish your fundamentals and help you become a better shooter. So whenever we actually pick up a gun and we get to the range or we're getting ready to shoot, kind of a proper stance to go by, if we look at our feet, let's start at our feet. You're gonna want your toes, if you notice, my dominant foot is about halfway back from my weak foot, okay? All you're gonna do from there is just step outward, just a little bit. Now I have a nice, kind of a little wider stance here, so it's gonna allow me to move left and right very easily. If we get a little too narrow in here, what happens is the recoil, we're not gonna really have the leverage over the recoil there. So we're gonna have a nice, easy, wide stance. And then from there, what we're gonna do is just put about, 3/4 of your weight onto your weak leg here. So we're gonna lean forward just a little bit, okay? And a good way to kind of demonstrate this is if we were gonna push this wall, if you're gonna try to push a brick wall over, how would we do that? We would basically walk up just like we were, and we were gonna push just like this, right? It's almost the same approach. And if you see a lot of other stances and things like that out there where you're hunkered over, I mean, you wouldn't do that to this wall, right? We wouldn't come over here and bend over and try to push this wall over. We're just gonna lean into it a little bit. So we got that stance, we have our weight, kind of lean forward just a little bit over that weak leg there. And then you notice I'm a little bit more of a natural position. My shoulders are up, my body is up, my neck is aligned right. I'm not hunched over or anything like that or getting ready like this. I'm just standing kind of straight up here. Once we present the pistol out, you notice my head is not gonna come down. I'm not gonna suck my shoulders up. It's gonna be very exhausting for you if you go up and you have a hunkered up shoulder and you're sucking your grip down in, okay? We just wanna be nice and natural. We're presenting the pistol out to the target. If you notice my arms here, I'm not fully extended out like this, and I'm not sucked in like this. I'm just somewhere right in between, wherever's comfortable for you. Basically, you want just a little bit of cushion on your elbows, a little bit of bend in there to absorb the recoil, okay? We want that recoil to move through our elbows, into our shoulders, and through our body, okay? If we have these things locked back, it's gonna push that recoil back like this, and it's gonna drive your body back, and you're gonna start leaning back a lot. And you'll start seeing shooters that start leaning a lot. So that's where they lose their ability to kind of get over the top of the recoil. So have our stance, we present it out, we have bend in our elbows. Our wrists are something very important, okay? If we have loose wrists, guess what's gonna happen to that recoil? it's gonna go up, right? We wanna lock your wrists in where they're nice and tight. That's what we're focusing on locking. Okay, once that is locked in, we can notice that recoil. We're gonna have a lot better control, and we're gonna direct that energy into our elbows as a cushion, as a shock absorber, okay? That's gonna allow that recoil to move very kind of just rearward towards you and not so much up, okay? So when we get into it, like I said, leaned in, we present out, wrists are locked, arms are just a little bit bent. When the gun recoils, it should be coming back at you just like that, okay? Everything is natural, should be nice and comfortable. You can hold that stance all day, not be exhausted, okay? So that is your basic stance, and it's good to go out there and work on it. You can do it like I did, no pistol whatsoever. Just practice getting into that stance and presenting out. One important thing when we start shooting handguns, when we talk about actually hitting our target, is going to be sight alignment here. Now what we're talking about when we say sight alignment is lining up this front sight that sits at the front of your pistol into a notch that is sitting into a sight on the rear of your pistol. There's a lot of different rear sights out there, but if we look at this one, it is a rectangle, at the bottom of a rectangle at the bottom of the rear sight. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the top of that post and align it with the very top of that rear sight. Once that happens, we want to make sure that that post is centered directly in that notch also. Now, whenever you pull up, it depends on your distance, but when we get that sight alignment, we get that post centered and leveled out perfectly in this rear sight, you'll notice there is going to be a little bit of play left and right within that notch. And that's going to allow you to kind of find that sight a little faster. But if you notice, if you have that front post like pushed all the way to the left, that shot is still going to hit a little bit to the left. So it depends on your situation and things like that. If you want a very accurate shot, we have to make sure that front post is lined up perfectly in that rear sight. But one thing to remember is your body is never going to be able to keep perfectly still. You're going to have to just adjust and take into account that you're naturally going to have a little bit of a shake and a little bit of a movement. You can't hold perfectly still, so just get that front sight in there as best as you can, and then concentrate on a really good trigger press. So next thing we want to talk about is our trigger press, actually the process of pulling the trigger, okay? This is very important. We've established what a grip is. We have to have that established very good, okay? When we look at actually pulling this trigger, we have our good grip on the gun. Just pretend my hand's here. I'm going to remove my weak hand just so you can see the demonstration of the trigger. But you are going to see this trigger is going to have a trigger blade safety in here. So that has to be engaged before this trigger can be pulled. So if you notice, I'm pulling on both sides of this trigger. I'm up top. You have to engage this before it will actually start to pull, okay? So it's one of the safeties on the gun. Once that is engaged, you're going to have what we call take up. So this is the area of movement before we get to the point where it's going to release the striker to ignite the round, to fire the round, okay? So you're going to have a little bit of play, and it's good to know where that, what we call the wall, you're going to feel this resistance where you hit. So it's good to become familiar with that so you know you're not just guessing, waiting, and then the gun go off, okay? You want to be able to pull straight back, find that wall very easily, and then be able to make a very accurate shot. So we've got the trigger blade safety, we got the take up, we're at the wall now, and this is a little bit of a resistance before, like I said, that firing pin falls. And what we want to do is when we get to this point, let's just go ahead and make sure our sights are lined up when you're out at the range, make sure everything's good, and then work on breaking that wall. You'll hear that nice good click, okay? That's going to simulate the round actually going off. So once that happens, this slide is going to pull back. It's going to load another round for you, so you don't have to worry about pulling the slide at all. And then Once you come up, you'll notice it'll actually reset and you're ready to pull the trigger again. Now, on most pistols, you don't have to worry about coming all the way off the trigger if you don't want. You can actually, once the gun fires, you can actually move your finger forward about 1/10 of an inch and it's ready to fire again. So if you need to shoot a little faster, you can, okay? But let's just pretend we're out of the range. We're gonna present this pistol. We're gonna make sure the sights are aligned, our grip's good. We're gonna put our trigger finger on the trigger. We're gonna pull back till we feel that resistance, that wall. Once we feel that wall, let's just verify everything's lined up good, and then break the wall. You should get a nice, accurate shot. As a new shooter, you're gonna hear this term all the time. It's called dry fire practice. And if you're kind of wondering what that is, what we're talking about is being at home, practicing with your gun with no ammo around, okay? The gun is dry, we are very safe, but it gives us some just familiarity of working with the pistol, okay? So what we're talking about here, when we come home or you got some spare time, 10 minutes, whatever, what you want to do is just go ahead and clear your gun, make sure everything's safe, keep the ammo completely away. It's still locked up in your safe, out of the way. We have a dry pistol here. What we want to work on in the beginning is just establishing our grip, getting familiar with the gun. So I would just say, work on getting a nice high grip, getting your offhand support on there, operating the slide, and then a big portion of it is just your trigger control, okay? So one easy drill you can do is literally stand at a wall, find a small point. You can put a small sticker or just find some random mark on your wall. We're gonna point at that. We're gonna establish our grip. We're gonna put our finger on the trigger. We're gonna get our sights aligned, and then we are going to break the trigger where you hear that click. And we're watching that sight, making sure it just stays very still. Okay, we don't want to see any dips or anything like that. We can come back, we can operate the slide again. That gives some repetitions on us actually pulling the slide back. We want to start kind of back down here, establish our grip again, point out at that small spot, finger on the trigger, and then break the trigger, and sights didn't move. So that's really good practice, and it's just gonna help you when you get out on the range with all the fundamentals. Okay, so later on, you're gonna hear people talk about speed and all this other stuff. Just in the beginning, we really need to work on establishing that grip and feeling very comfortable with presenting that pistol and pulling the trigger.
Box over there on the left-hand side that comes up first, and you will see the live show feed daily. And then
right now, it's about 10,000 of them, and so.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon as we release the report about the DC jail and our findings there. Unusually cruel. That's the title that we gave this report, because this is the treatment that we found of the pretrial January 6th defendants being held right here in Washington, D.C. in the jail. Now, I will tell you, along with my colleagues here, which I'm very grateful to serve with them, we had been trying many times to get into the jail to take a tour. And we're used to doing that as members of Congress. We're used to touring facilities, and it's never been a problem. As a matter of fact, normally we're welcome. But we were denied entrance by Deputy Warden Landerkin multiple times. As a matter of fact, she'd locked us out before. And it was clear that there was a lot to hide. Right now, what we have happening in America is a two-tiered justice system. Let's all take a little trip down memory lane, shall we? In the summer of 2020, there has been an estimated number somewhere around 7,750 to over 10,000 BLM demonstrations. According to the press, approximately 6% of them were violent. That's 570 riots if you do the math there. But here's the deal. There was only one riot that took place here in Congress at the Capitol on January 6th. But what we have seen unfold has been unbelievable. It is a two-tier justice system. So we know that approximately 90% and more of Antifa BLM rioters have been released from jail. Their charges have been dropped. We know that in cities across America, there have been over $2 billion in damage. But here at the Capitol on January 6th, it's approximately $1.5 million. There's a clear difference. But yet we have a January 6th committee that Nancy Pelosi is leading that is nothing but a political witch hunt on Republicans and Trump supporters all across America and anyone that was at the Capitol on January 6th. What's happening to these people being held in custody is wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's a violation of their rights. And it is an abuse that I call on every single member of Congress to start paying attention to. We need investigations. It's outrageous. The American people are purely upset, disgusted, and cannot believe this is happening in our country. And I think all of us should be appalled. You see, this jail in Washington, D.C. has been known. It's had many reports of being a despicable place as early as 1976. U.S. District Court Judge William Bryant ruled the conditions inside the jail violated the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. In 2015, a report filed showed the jail was plagued by mold, vermin, and water leaks. 2016, the jail had to move 200 inmates because of excessive heat. In November 2021, the Marshal Service found the CDF to be inhospitable, but yet people are still being housed there. But the January 6 defendants are being treated differently on a whole nother level. They have been beaten by the guards. They are called white supremacists. They are denied religious services, haircuts, shaving, the ability to trim their fingernails. There's more outrageous things happening there. They're denied time with their attorneys. They are denied the ability to even see their families and have their families visit there. They are denied bail and being held there without bail. Many of these people have never been charged for a crime before. Some of them are veterans. And the treatment is unbelievable. They are told they have to denounce President Trump. They are told that their views are the views of cult members, even though these are men that every single night at 9 o'clock at night, they put their hand over their heart and sing the national anthem voluntarily. Imagine a group of men being held in jail with no idea of when they're going to go to court, no ability to bail out, no ability to see their family, being mistreated and abused worse than we treat terrorists at Gitmo, yet they have their hand over their heart every night at 9 o'clock and sing the national anthem. That's something I don't think any of us can fathom. While they're being persecuted by the very government that has the American flag over our buildings. This is completely wrong. Whether we agree, disagree, and I can tell you right now, I completely disagree and am very against the violence that happened on January 6th at the Capitol. We should all disagree with how these people are being treated. This is completely unacceptable. And as Americans, this should go beyond political boundaries, and we should all come together and declare that this is wrong and call for it to stop. We never want to have those in power to be able to wield their power against people they politically disagree with, especially in a time where we saw political riots all over the country, and the people that committed those riots, not only most of them have been let off of their charges, but many of them were never mistreated like this. I also want to explain something to you all. The Democrat platform, Act Blue, raised money for BLM, a lot of money. And BLM brought in millions and millions of dollars. But it was BLM violence and riots that were out of control. Many of these were peaceful demonstrations, but the riots that got out of control Those were assaults and violence on private property and private citizens. But yet here we see nothing day in and everything, day in and day out in the news. It's all about the Capitol riot. Congress only cares about itself. It clearly demonstrates to the American people. It does not care about your business that got burned down. It doesn't care about the job you lost. Congress doesn't care about your city or community that was devastated by violence. They don't care about you taxpayers that have to pay to fix and mend, and they don't care about the person that assaulted you, looted your store, or hurt you in this violence. They don't care about any of that. They only care about themselves, and they're willing to use the Department of Justice, the FBI, the prisons, the jails, the guards, and any means possible to make sure that you never mess with them again. This is wrong. It's unusually cruel.
So, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you think about January 6th or the protesters involved, just know that the Democrats have political prisoners in jail right now that they're torturing, and they'll do that to anybody. They're just getting us warmed up for it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. This is the InfoWars War Room, brought to you by InfoWarsStore.com. And you've probably been noticing we've been having some internet problems today, but we are streaming live at band.video, freeworldnews.tv, warroomisraw.com. Rumble, you can find us, Infowars-band.video or Owen Schroyer Live. And now on Getter, streaming live as well, band.video on Getter. We now have the network feed going up there as well. And last night, I finally commandeered the Getter handle at All I Do Is Owen, the handle I've had for years now, I guess even more than a decade maybe, but banned on Twitter. And our great social media team here was able to get that handle from whoever else had it. And last night, I fired up a live stream on Getter. So big ups to Getter. I would say that Getter is now the #1 competitor with Twitter when it comes to short form scrolling live news feeds. And now with the ability to go live with the click of a button on the app on a phone. I could do it right now. And I got to tell you, it was a pretty revolutionary concept, considering we haven't had the ability to do that in such a long time. And we've gotten so used to not having that ability. It's still kind of, it was a revolutionary thing for me to do it last night. It felt like having that Promethean fire of live ability in the palm of my hands that's been stripped from me, but now I have it again. I almost just want to fire one up right now, just to be totally redundant, because it's just such a cool technology. And I was banned from doing it. And now, thanks to Getter, I'm back. So I'd say Getter now #1 competitor with Twitter as far as the technology front is concerned in that style of an app or a news ticker or social media app. So you can find us there. We're just continuing to look for other areas to have our live streams up and upload our content. In the age of censorship, that's what we have to do. And of course, we had to build our own infrastructure. That's you included. You are that we, all of us, you in the audience, us here at InfoWars, we all had to build our own infrastructure. That's band.video, so that we could even be live at all. And you may remember yesterday I was covering the story where Axios and Brian Stelter are complaining, oh, the right wing lives in an echo chamber. Well, yeah, you banned us from everything, so we had to build our own thing. What do you think is going to happen? And so I don't know who made this meme but I found it in response to that story. And I don't know if they were listening to the show and that's why they thought of this meme, but it was perfect. It's the perfect meme for what I was trying to communicate yesterday. And it's big tech is censoring conservatives. And then the left says, build your own app then. So then the right says, okay. And then the left says, why are you creating an echo chamber? Because that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happened. So it's our own infrastructure. We built it because they kicked us off of everything else. But good for Getter. Tip of the cap to them. Tip of the cap to them. Tip of the cap to Rumble. We're glad to utilize your technology that you want to have free. You want Americans to have free speech on. So good for you. Now we do have a little bit of political news, some geopolitical news, some updates, if you'll call it that, on the Patriot Front phenomenon that went down this weekend. It does appear to be some. I'd say all the evidence right now goes towards it's either a Fed op or some Lincoln Project front group. The evidence that it's actually an organic, conservative, Protect America group is few and far between, if any at all, actually. Not sure I've seen any. But it being a Lincoln Project front group or some sort of a Fed post, that's where the evidence leads. We do have shocking news coming from the southern border. I'm going to get into the border news with Dan Lyman coming up in the second hour. And, of course, he runs Border Hawk News as well. So we'll be talking with Dan Lyman about what's coming from the southern border really soon with some shocking footage that I have. I mean, we've seen dystopian footage, folks. We have seen dystopian footage, and it just keeps getting even more dystopic as these migrant hordes continue to come here. There it is right there. I mean, wow. And so this is one of the migrant hordes that's in Chiapas, Mexico right now. And no, they're not going to load up on the InfoWars coffee, though they might. I don't know. They may be looking for a bag of that smooth coffee from InfoWarsStore.com. Produced by the local Chiapas farmers in the mountains where they get a special shade-grown coffee. Cannot be replicated. Only at InfoWarsStore.com. But seriously, that's where our coffee does come from. But that's where this migrant horde is coming from, not to deliver coffee, but to suck off of our welfare system and vote Democratic. And then I have a story today of how it all comes full circle with what they're trying to do in Austin right now. But it's just taking what they're doing in Austin right now, what they're currently doing and bragging about, and then applying that same game plan to all of these other big cities where they've already done it. And then, but it's the same Democrat tactics. They engage in something, and then they point the finger at you saying you're doing it. Russian collusion. I mean, you just go on and on. Gerrymandering is the latest example. So Democrats are in the process of gerrymandering right now. But it's 21st century illegal immigration gerrymandering, where they don't just gerrymander with district lines or political lines to get results they want. They also flood the areas with illegal immigrants and then use that as kind of the excuse to gerrymander, or that what they say is Republicans trying to gerrymander. But it's really them gerrymandering with population numbers and voting districts. So the Republicans want to keep voting districts the same, and the Democrats say, no, we can't do that. Look at how population dense these areas are, where they put all of the illegal immigrants. So we'll get into that. I've got a stack of COVID and vaccine news. Also, it's getting worse in Europe for the unvaccinated, or the non-vaccinated, should I say. Of course, it's not even a vaccine. The non-poisoned, the purebloods. It's getting worse for the purebloods in Europe. We'll talk to Dan Lyman about that as well. And then they don't even hide it anymore. I mean, they are now full segregationists on the vaccine mandate front. So the vaccine medical industrial complex cult has now gone full segregationist, where they now are proposing that non-vaccinated people shouldn't even be allowed in public and you shouldn't socialize with them, and they shouldn't be allowed to work, and they shouldn't be allowed at grocery stores and restaurants. And, of course, you heard this over a year ago right here at InfoWars. We will be doing the latest updates on the Maxwell case. We're not going to forget about that. We'll be doing the latest updates coming out of there. And then the Smollett case. Yes, the Jussie Smollett case had some interesting developments today. I'll tell you, this is for what is really, I mean, it's really an inconsequential thing, except that it just shows that Democrats stage events, and it just shows that liberals are constantly faking hate crimes, and the media picks up on it to further their agenda to racially divide this country and to just further fuel their anti-white bigotry. So just crazy details coming out of that. Plus, I got about 10 or 15 video clips we'll get to as well. There's Alec Baldwin charging at a reporter. That's always a good look, Alec, when you're currently in a case involving you shooting someone. So we'll go ahead and just play that right now just because we rolled that B-roll. So here is, I think it was, I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was John Levine who happened to see Baldwin in New York City. He was asking what he was doing there. And that's when he charged him with an umbrella. The only thing, here, I'm going to play the video, and then I'm going to tell you what I wish would have happened. And it would have been the greatest moment. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest moments in internet history had he done this at the time. But here's Baldwin charging at Jonathan